Yeah. So there's a scripture in the Bible that says, you're right if you're on the Buddhist channel, I'm just talking about something else now. That says, if I say to myself, I shall put on a happy face, then and only then shall my countenance be changed. And so we think, well, how can I be happy if there are things going on in my life that make me sad? And that's not realizing that we have a choice of how we will face and address every circumstance that comes into our life. Happiness doesn't mean that we're jumping up and down and clicking our heels for joy, but it does mean that once we really understand the nature of things, we have a choice of how we will respond to it. When we don't understand, we don't have a choice. We're just caught up in it. But as we begin to understand, then we have to conscientiously make the choice to act in a way that gets the results that we're ultimately looking for. And so this takes a lot of inner reflection. I'm sorry, we didn't open. Can we open? That's fine. Okay. Sorry.
Big trouble.
All the auspicious clouds gather everywhere, with the most sincerity, all Buddhists of you. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Bodhisattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Bodhisattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Bodhisattvas. So I'm going to be short today because it's such a nice day. And we've had several days of rain. And I want you to be able to get out and enjoy this weather, you know. So we should put forth our most ardent effort, but that efforting does not have to be strenuous. It can be joyful effort. Actually, you do better. You do better with joyful effort. With it that allows you to really land in the bullseye of your intention. This is a test. What were the 5 fears of Bodhisattva at the causal stage? Or
reputation,
death, going into a lower realm, and generosity.
speaking too high in front of high gurus.
good. Was that more than 5? That was 5. That was 5 we did. Okay. The fear of giving, being generous, livelihood, speaking in front of high gurus, reputation, and reputation. Reputation is really an important one. Maybe not so much in the beginning, but as you start to advance, you know how they talk about leaving, as you start moving up the ladder of success, like just speaking of worldly success, your friends change, you start hanging with a new crowd. It's the same way with spiritual stuff, that as we start moving up, it's like who we're seeing with the circle that we run with, all these kinds of things. I think one of the great examples, both in the life of Shakyamuni Buddha and Jesus was that at the end of their life, they demonstrated for us the perfect picture of what it means to reverse our worldly understanding of increase and starts with a D, the word.
Decrease. Decrease.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cheap.
That's a 74 moment of increase and decrease. And he says the fundamental issue that we have with a worldly mind is that things that we consider increase are actually decrease, and what we consider decrease is actually increase. And so, just before the Last Supper, I mean, Jesus had made this triumphant entry, into Jerusalem, and he was riding on a donkey, and they gave him this, and they threw arms at him, and all this, and the throngs of people out there, and they were like, "Hail, our Lord and King." And a few days later, well, we know what happened at the end of that story. And so when he got, so they were like just praising him, and he was the King of Kings and all of that. And a very short while later, he looked around, there were 12 disciples left. And he said, "Will you leave me also?" And they said, "Where could we go? If we know that you're the way, the truth, and the life, you know." And so, and then, they never tell the story and I've never heard anybody tell the story in Buddha. Maybe somebody tells it, but they leave us this idea of this great life and work and glorious progression of the Buddha, and now millions of disciples or followers of that way. But the truth is, in the beginning, the kings, the merchants, those in authority received his message because they thought that by following that, they would have more gain in the worldly ways that we think of gain, what brings us prosperity, fame, renown, victory in battle, on and on and on. And over the period of time that he taught, which was a lot of years, so 40 years or something like that, they locked Jesus off at 3, but he had a long time. But at the end, they were like, "Oh, following this way, we're not going to get more money. We're not going to get more fame. We're not going to get, and not in the ways that they understood what increased was." By that time, they had stopped talking with him. He was back at the end of his life, back in the jungle, in the beginning years, they land for his disciples and just taking care of all of their end of his life. It wasn't there, and so later generations in the East built up a prosperous outpicturing of it, whole government support. If I lived in, and I was a man, if I lived in, Cambodia, or I lived in Thailand, or I lived in Sri Lanka, or I lived in Laos, or I lived, and I was a male, everything would be taken care of, because they hold the container in high esteem, but in actuality, that's not happening. If we have a wrong idea about that, that kind of is a, but what I'm saying is you can't look at the outside and make a judgment about what it is. That's what I'm trying to say. And if your eyes are focused in that way, you will miss the great prize in walking this path, and you'll miss the great peace that you're longing for, or that was promised on this path. And a lot of times when we come with that idea. We recognize that we're suffering, or we recognize that there's something, and we're looking for escape from that suffering. And escape is not always getting that thing that we're looking for. It is being free of the suffering of not having it, you know, and that is the true freedom. That's the true liberation. And that allows you to sing happy songs in the midst of trials, and then ultimately to think in terms of there are no trials. In the beginning, we see them as trials. We see them as tribulation. But as time goes on, we don't see them that way. You know, I talk about it a lot because we do presently still see things as trials or tribulations or obstacles be overcome, but as time goes on, you no longer see them and hold them that way, because what becomes supreme in your mind is the acceptance, I'll say, the awareness, the realization of causality, cause and effect. Part of it is we're perplexed. Like, how could this happen? How could it be? How could he get there? How could they do this? So there's the how question. And this Dharma for us answers the how did this come about? You see, it's not why is this happening? Who did it? But how does this come about? On the vastest, most pronounced level, it explains that. And I tell you, once you hear a thing, I mean, really hear it so that it goes down into your heart and becomes part of your knowing, you can't unhear it. You can try. Actually, you'll suffer more trying to like uproot that you heard it, because it'll dog you. It'll just keep hanging around until you have to finally like just break down and admit that it's true, or you have to go someplace else, because it will not let you go. I love it that the Dharma's like a tiger who has you by the tail, like you cannot get away. You cannot get away from it. And if you allow it to, it will regulate your mind. Uh, I like, I would always say, well, I didn't say it, but it said in the Christian scriptures that um, that teachings were like a heart fixer and a mind regulator. That's what the Dharma is like to me, heart fixer and a mind regulator. And so I have the confidence, or the faith, oh, that bad F word. I have the confidence, the faith. I have the B word's worse, the belief, but it's not blind. It's based on something. No, it's based on and some of the part of that something is not just on that side. It's on my side. What I've given to it, what I put into it, how I dedicate myself to realizing its truth, how willing I am to ponder what it says, even when on first off I hear, oh, like that ain't right. First off, not always. That's not always true. Or we immediately come up with our objections, because that's just I'm sorry, I can't see you. Can you move over just a little bit? No, that,
Is that all right?
yes, it is. Thank you. Joe, can you go that way? Just a hair. Nobody else has moved. We're good. It was just a little bit. Thank you. Thank you. And so it's really important that we hold the Dharma in this way. We have to know what our part is. You're talking about relational. It is relational. The Dharma is relational. It is absolutely relational, but if you don't put your part in, you don't have any relationship with it. So you can't say that there's something wrong with the Dharma. You have to give yourself to it. And we know what it is to give. We give ourselves to others all the time, to some others. We give ourselves to who we want to give ourselves to. We can be understanding with who we want to be understanding with. We can be accommodating and loving and forgiving to who we want to be kind and accommodating and loving and giving to. So we know a little bit about it, maybe not in its broad sense, but in its contracted sense. And the only thing the Dharma does is no, he's good. It tries to broaden, don't mean, yeah, you're really, really good.
Okay.
Right where you were. Mhm.
Okay.
Right where you
Sorry.
were.
I wanna make sure you can see. Sorry.
He knows the drill. Uh, and so it's important for us to do our part in this relationship. You see what I mean? It's like I come to Dharma, I want him to give me something. I want the Dharma to do something for me, and coming in with that idea, creates an impotency. Is that a word? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Creates an impotency and a vacuum in the relationship. So it's not pregnant with anything. Nothing can come for because nothing's in it. But when we put something in it, then we find that there's some inert ingredient there that begins to move upon us, and something happens, something transforms. That's all the transformation is. It is coming into contact with the unadulterated, pure prajna, and it begins to move upon us. And in that movement, what actually happens is that the ignorance is is moved out or pushed out, and there's just like the stainless wisdom that remains, and out of that wisdom comes all of the virtues that we are looking for to be manifest in life. I mean, if nobody just wakes up and says, I was born to be bad. I mean, we made that song, Born to Be Wild, but, but we really, nobody just decides, I'm gonna be a hellion. I'm gonna hurt everybody and be a bad person. I mean, we don't, and yet we do all of these things, hurting people all the time, hurting ourselves all the time. And what the Dharma does for us is it shows us where and how, or it gives us um, a, a blueprint, understanding, a rail to run on to help us begin to see how we produce our own suffering and how we also cause suffering for others. And when we see it, our first tendency can be to object to it. 'Cause I'm a good girl, I am. I'm not like that. I don't think like that, but he says, like, we have to admit it. It's why honesty is the main cornerstone, of our cultivation. Because I mean, like, if you lie to yourself, forget it. You're just done. And have such a habit of trying to cover ourselves up, thinking that because we're so attached to our image of who we are and who we want to project to the world, that we can't get out. We can't get out from, we can't get out of the space we're in because it would be so radical, or we think that the loss would that we think that the gain would be a loss to us personally. And so he says you have to try to allow the concept that maybe we have it turned around, that what we consider loss is actually gain, and what we consider gain might be loss. After all, there's some reason we're in such a state of fear and anxiety and self-fullness. There's a reason. There's a reason behind the madness. There is a reason. And he said, you have to approach the Dharma like one who is sick, who is approaching the doctor for medicine. Now, in my medical file, I'll admit, and I am working on it, that they have me down as non-compliant. And actually, I went to the hospital a couple of months ago, and she came and says, "Oh yeah, we called your doctor. She said you're non-compliant." So it was like, "You in pain?" Like I didn't even feel like they were trying to help me. I was just saying, "Well, maybe your chest wouldn't be hurting if you took your heart pills," or something like that. And I said, that's a terrible reputation to have, particularly as a Buddhist nun. I mean, like, even it's okay if I'm non-compliant, but they can't know I'm non-compliant, right?
Badge of honor in their circles.
I was like, that stuff you give me, if what I have doesn't kill me, that will for sure, and but sometimes we need a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's just I feel like they try to give you too much of it, and then things get messed up. This is like a hair of the dog that bit you, for those who used to drink but don't anymore. It's just, sometimes you need a little bit of that, and you find that what is poison has healing properties, but at a certain level, poison is just poison, and so it's when we hold the Dharma in this way, this is how we're building relationship with a trustworthy friend. He doesn't say, I like Allison, I don't like Bob, So Alice can get by with things, but Bob, I'm gonna nail Bob. It's not personal in that way. So when situations arise in my life, I am looking to see what clarity is understanding causality, cause and condition. Sometimes uh, I can make a correlation. Sometimes I absolutely cannot. But what I do know, from what I have been able to clearly see and make a correlation, is that it's an immutable law. Now, the thing about laws is laws are hierarchical. That means that there can be one and there can be another principle that if you put that into operation, it supersedes the previous one, like the law of aerodynamics superseding the law of gravity. Now, it doesn't mean that gravity no longer exists because of the law. I now know about the law of aerodynamics. If I go upstairs and jump out the window, I'm going to land hard. But if I knew how to apply the forces and conditions that would oppose the law of gravity or balance out or neutralize, then I could use them, and I would, and then the law of aerodynamics would operate. Now I can't say, well, I like that one in the law of aerodynamics. I like that one. I don't like that one. I like that one, and I'll think about that one. I have to chew on that one a little longer. Then when I try, it's not going to work, right? Because I haven't applied all of the principles that's needed. Well, you can't learn all the principles at one time. You have to learn them bit by bit, here a little, there a little, until you come to the completeness of a thing. But once we hear about something, we are looking for an immediate response. Okay, so I'll work with this, but if it doesn't happen in 2 weeks, I'm done. I'm going to look for something else. And so we miss the prize by not moving to completion of the principles and the methods that we take up. We decide how far we want to go, how much of it we want. you know, and then we do that. And we say, yeah, well, I tried that and that didn't work. Or, you know, I really don't like that. Do you like, you know, the way you feel about people on edge, suspicious of everybody? Do you like that better? Does that give you something? You know, then you don't have to have that. And he tells us how we can uproot that. Now, I'm not so Pollyanna-ish that I believe that sometimes when we start going this way, we get into this kind of state where everybody's good and everything is good. So like I see no evil, I hear no evil. I mean, because there is evil in the world because there's good in the world. There's good in the world because there's evil in the world. I mean, you can't have one without the other. That is a kind of relationship, you know. So until one comes to a mind of equality, a non-differentiating mind, you know, that does not lean to the left or to the right, towards good as good or evil as evil, those extremes, there will be good and evil. But to the mind that is equal in its observation, who sees only the law of causality, then you're out picturing, I mean, you're just going to see something different. You're going to understand something in a different way. You're going to hold it in a different way. And you're going to operate and conduct your life from that viewpoint. That's it. So we can't actually like give people the dharma. We can't actually like save living beings. We can only save ourselves. But in the process of us saving ourselves, others can see and others can observe. And so you give people something. Like I give people my fearlessness. That one I have worked at, and I have it. I mean, I really have it. And partly it's because maybe of the obstacles I've had to overcome in this life and the things I've had to deal with being just who I am. I could say, deal with being a woman and feeling less than. I could say dealing with being Black and feeling less than. I could say dealing with being in the South and it being a different culture. I'm like, what the hell is this? You know, it could be, but by me being open to figure it out, I came to know it. And knowing it is 50% of the battle. And not having an animosity towards it is the other 50%. And then you can abide peacefully, you know, even when you undergo hardships, or even, you know, when you know that people are rooting against you, or even when people don't like you, or even when you forget about fame and gain and pleasure and what's the other one?
Pain.
No, the other good one.
Shame.
Another good one.
Fame, pleasure, pain, loss, and gain. Gain. Did I say gain? I used to say gain first. Okay. Oh, I must be growing. So that's the four, what we consider positive worldly wins, right? And then we have our negative ones, and that would be loss, pain,
Shame.
shame, um,
So repeat, like an
Um,
reputation.
I'm making rhymes so that I can remember them. So I have to do it this way: pleasure and pain, loss and gain, fame and shame, pleasure and pain. And those are the eight worldly winds, the four opposing forces. But when I'm not thinking of something being either pleasurable or painful, then I'm in a space of equanimity, an inner, I'm in a space of inner peace. So what's in me, that's what I can outpicture. That's what I see in front of me because I'm looking through that lens. But you see, nobody can do that for me. I have to do that for myself. And so we have all these methods, 84,000 teachings, they say. I just think that was like a really big number. In 500 BC, it might not be exactly 84,000, but it means like, like just a incalculable number of methods. And because I know one or two, and I go around and somebody introduces me to method number 3 and 4, it's like, no, there's this one and there's this one, and that's the hindrance of the known. That once we know something, we bank on that and we look at everything else through the lens of what we already know. Yes,
Well, I think you said pleasure and pain twice. The other one is censure and praise.
praise and gain. Pleasure and pain, praise and gain.
No, loss and gain.
I mean, sorry,
Loss and gain, censure and praise, and then,
they got to match.
oh,
Praise is blind.
I mean,
Praise and
in my,
gain.
in my,
Yeah, okay.
in my head, they've got to, I got to rhyme them.
Okay.
Pleasure and
Gain,
pain,
pain.
fame and shame,
Okay.
loss and gain,
Praise.
praise and blame.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Yes.
So when you started out, or when we read the other day, that was so confusing, was the increase and the decrease.
I'm getting
So
to
much,
it.
oh, sorry.
I have to lay the foundation. Giving two talks on it already.
Okay.
And I know you didn't get it,
No, my
which
head
is
was
why,
doing the
which is
big
why we're doing a
the-
third talk on it today. So that means sometimes, like, if we don't get something, that means we started at the top. That means you have to go a little deeper, build more of a foundation. Don't get that, go a little deeper, build more of a foundation. Because I want you to get it. It's so important to get it because it's a game changer in how you see life and how you walk through life as you get this. And you don't have to know the whole counsel of the Buddha Dharma. You can from just a few things, it's enough if you go deep with them instead of going surface wide, know a whole lot about a little bit, but if you know, but if you go deep, it has opening up the space. You enter a different kind of mind state, accommodate the wisdom on that level. So sometimes we want to understand something. We're struggling with all of our might. We're trying to understand a concept, because all of the Buddhist teaching is concept until it's real in your life. It's a concept, So we can say like this is like, y'all talk about concepts and ideas, but we like teach like reality. It's all concept until it is actually reality in your life, that you can actually walk it out. So walking something out doesn't necessarily mean that you are successful at it. You could be successful at it, or you could be at something, or you could be failing, but you still see the reality of it. Like, I know I cause myself suffering all the time. I'm not confused about that. You know, I'm not confused about that, but I also recognize I'm making decisions all the time about what my preference is and at the moment, what I'm willing to do, what I'm willing to do. Now, so I might not have won the battle, but I'm progressing. Yeah, I'm advancing my territory, on the battlefield. I'm advancing my territory because at least I'm recognizing my unwillingness to shift my view. I hold the view, but to shift my action, that's a little harder than shifting my view, But the purpose of the teachings are to reinforce until your mind becomes clear. It's like we used to have, my mother worked in a Chinese laundry. tell you, there's nobody who could get whites whiter than her. And there was nobody, I mean, her ironing, I mean, you cut your finger on a crease. She was, oh, I just, and no matter who ironed their clothes for school, she look at that and say, take that off. And she pull out the ironing board, you know. She learned how to clean clothes and she learned how to iron. But we had this washboard, you know, we also played it in church on Sundays too. And we take a butter knife and oh no, that was when we played in church. I mean, I'm talking about washing now. And it had waffles on it, and you put your lye soap on it, and you scrub and you scrub and you scrub. But that's what the Dharma does. The Dharma scrubs away our ignorance. Now, that means that we have to be willing to allow it to do that. That's its faithfulness to our aspiration. You see, it's like a protector that will say, even when you would harm yourself, I will stand here to protect you. I will lay the guardrail for you. I will keep you safe. To me, it's the ultimate relationship because although it appears to be personal in the beginning, you find that it's impersonal. It goes for me, it goes for you, it goes for the goose, it goes for the gander. It with impartiality available to everyone in equal measure, not dependent upon how it feels about you today. I like you today, so or there's something on my mind right now and I can't deal with you today. It's not flaky and wishy-washy like that. It's ever ready, it's ever steady, and I can be in relationship with it or not. So although I'm unfaithful to it again and again and again, you know, it's always faithful to me. I can find it in the same place all the time. And the same place is not necessarily the same thing, because when I come and I'm coming from this angle, it points me in the other direction to look and get the other half that I'm missing. If I'm coming from this angle today, it points me if I'm heading east, it helps me connect east and west. If I'm whatever direction I'm going in that has me lopsided and one-sided, it helps bring that balance. It restores me. And so this is what, now I'm just trying to share with you what the Dharma can be to you and what the Dharma is to some of us. It's not a bunch of rules and regulations, don't touch, don't taste, don't handle. It's not about that. But it's allowing me to see the danger in things, the danger in some thoughts that I harbor that seem like on the surface, very good thoughts that will help some people. But I may be thinking that thought, but with the wrong motivation. And ultimately, that motivation is going to burn me, you know. And so it says, question your thought. I don't have to question this. I know this is right, this is good. It says, yes, I know you do. But think about it anyway. Bodhisattvas who hear the or maybe the bad ones don't need one. Maybe it's the good people who need a bodhisattva, the ones who think they're good, And so it has a way of expanding our capacity to see a bigger picture, to understand something more fully. So you have to know what you asserting, what you're signing up for, and what you want. Now, a bodhisattva, I can recognize the benefit of having a helpmate in my life, right? I can recognize the benefit of that. But I also recognize that I'm not only not perfect, the more I look at me, the less good I think I am, you know? And so, but I still want a bodhisattva to help me, to support me, right? So why do I want a bodhisattva to help and support me when I can clearly see my imperfections, but I don't want them to help or support him because his imperfections are greater than mine. So I don't want them to help him. So a bodhisattva has to take this impartial view, you see. I'm trying to be a bodhisattva. Then I must take up this impartial view, or I'm going to be limited in my ability to help. I'm going to be limited in my capacity to succor suffering. I'm going to be limited in my capacity to even recognize that there is suffering. I mean, one who suffers causes other people to suffer. So if somebody's causing you to suffer, you have to know that they themselves are in great suffering. If you think that they're enjoying all of their wickedness, have you forgotten? Do you enjoy yours? I don't enjoy mine, even when I do it. Or if I do, I know it's short-lived. That hissy fit I just had and tore up the room, I know I have a deep, maybe regret about it. Or, something like that. And I think about what's done is done. Only thing I can do now is to try to not do it again. That's number one, because I see the danger of it, and to hope for the understanding of others, that they don't think like I'm like that 24/7. That was just that moment. But I have other qualities, that maybe are somewhat redeeming. I'm a good person, I am. And so what this vastness does is it allows us to not be like down in the forest where we can't see the trees for the forest, but to be perched at an apex, at the pinnacle of our sight and clarity, where we can look down and we can peruse the whole thing. We can see what's coming from that angle and what's coming from that side and what's hidden right there. And where there's a higher plateau that we can be on, where we can look off into the distance and chart our course. It's all of that. That's all the Dharma is. And you see, it depends 100% upon us cultivating our relationship with it. So those 5 fears, it says those are the 5 fears of Bodhisattva in the causal stage, or Bodhisattva in the beginning stages have, and as they advance, they no longer have those fears. Now, how do those fears dissolve? Those fears dissolve through the perfection of certain qualities and virtues, through the perfection of certain qualities and virtues. So it says that the Buddha looked at and he expounded on the qualities and the virtues of a bodhisattva. So as we learn about what those qualities and virtues are, we can look and see if they reside in us and to what degree they reside in us. We can see then when they are present in others. We might not know to what degree, but we can begin to get an expanded vision of how they must be according to the openness of the mind, being able to wrap mind with mind. And we call that a power, but it's not a power that we gain through effort. efforting, it becomes a power that automatically manifests in us because it coincides with our degree of virtue. So I can be intent with all my heart, but if I don't establish certain conduct in life, I will never have the mind that can see or penetrate to see and understand certain things. My mind would just not be able to understand it. The mind is cloudy. The mind is suspicious. The mind is negative in thought. The mind has derogatory thoughts. The mind. What mind? Their mind? No, my mind towards them. And before I can get to a place that I can see what's really happening, I have to clear up the fog that's in my own mind. And to the extent I do that, I see clearer and clearer. So sometimes something can happen and you make a judgment based on something that you just saw or you just heard or you just witnessed, And the next time you see that person, where does your mind go to? It connects with that. And you keep that thing going. You bring that into today. You bring that into this present moment. But you can't necessarily find that person in that same place today. That's just your thought connecting with a previous thought and made it alive again. That could be completely gone in that person's life, but it's still alive in yours. And so you see them or you see a situation from the lens. So when we talk about when the prior thought drops and the next thought has not just arisen, it's there in that gap. We have this idea, I don't know what kind of idea you have. Like there's a thought and here's a thought and there's nothing and right there and oh, that's just talk. But in a way that we can understand it in a living it, walking it out way is whatever I witnessed even a moment ago, that person doesn't have to be. I capture that moment and lock my next thought into the last thought, then that's exactly what I'm going to see. And so these teachings help us to work at dissolving those kinds of what we call false appearances based on what we see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and think. Now, because we actually also exist here, we have to use those sense gates for our conventional locomotion and mobility. We have to use them. But at the same time, he's saying, don't let those reign as the supreme lens through which we maneuver life. Use them in their appropriate spaces, in the appropriate measure, and you will see your life begin to change. So we have these 5 fears, the ones that we talked about the last 2 Dharma talks, because we have not perfected the paramis. So the paramis are, the 5 are giving, a generosity, without reciprocity and without recognition, without reciprocity and without recognition. It's discipline, and that includes, ethics. It includes selfless service. It includes, like that's why we have the 5 precepts: not to kill living beings, not to take what's not offered, to avoid, they say sexual misconduct, because that's one of the, a very prominent grievance, but it could be avoiding sensual misconduct.
central misconduct is don't let what you see be 100% of the story for you. Don't let the little bit you heard be the whole deal for you. Don't let your feelings override everything else. Don't, so don't let what you think be the absolute law, or you're convinced that that's how it is because that's how you think. What you touch, develop a tolerance for being able to touch things, to be able to hear things, to be able to bear up under. Nothing's worse than hearing, and be careful how you hear. Don't even listen too much. Don't even want to know too much, because you might hear somebody talking about you. The third one is patience, developing the patience. Now, patience, when I was, like I say, I don't know how to speak of it other than I have in the past. I was going to say when I was an active out here labeled uh, Christian, and the Bible teaches patience. I looked at all the things the Bible taught about virtue, and I liked that one. The only one I didn't like was patience, because it said, and patience comes through overcoming tribulation. It comes. I'm like, tribulation. I don't want if the only way I'm gonna get patience is through tribulation, I don't need that one. I'm all right with that one. But when I get to the dharma, now it's been broken down for me, and I understand that that's where I find my strength. That's where I find my fearlessness. That's where I temper myself. In martial arts, we would do a practice in our kung fu is we would heat sand, and the sand when the sand was hot, it'd be too hot to like handle it. It would burn you, but you slapped your hands in, slap it out, slap it in, slap it out, and then you oil your hand, like how you did when you got a new baseball glove, and you have to oil it up so it becomes pliable and soft, and so that your was a training that we underwent, so that if we hit you, you were hit, and so this is what it's like. And so it takes patience. It means it takes, and you need a method to survive, to survive the onslaught of the vicissitudes that come with developing patience. So one of our tools that we use with patients is first to see the benefit or the outcome. If I could tolerate this, what does it do for me? If I could tolerate the the practice, what is the perfection of it? What's the end product? What do I get out of this? And so for martial artists, I didn't like putting my hands in hot sand. Did it hurt? Yes. Did it burn? Yes, it did. But after a while, it no longer hurt, and it no longer burned. And that became no longer a practice for me. It became there was an assurance that if I got close enough to you, I could take care. I could handle myself. And so when I walked down the street, I didn't have fear. And there was a time that I did. I was challenged when I worked at the post office by a woman there. And I never thought about having fear. I never thought about having fear of anybody. I never thought about fighting anybody. I'm a grown woman. I'm going to work, doing my job. And she was sitting at our table, and she was known as like a ruffian, and I was I asked for a cigarette, I think. I smoked for a short period of time, and I asked for a cigarette. And
She gave me one. We were all sitting at a lunch table just eating. And she gave me one. And so then we were all discussing something. And apparently I said something that she didn't like, that disagreed. And she jumped up and she snatched the cigarette out of my mouth. And fear arose in me. And I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything.
Should have given you a hissy fit.
Yeah, no, I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything because I really was afraid of her. And people looked around the table. I lost face in my own eyes that day because there were people who respected me around the table, you know. But I felt disrespected and I felt that I had lost face because I am Puncher out. Now I wouldn't, now I wouldn't do that now. But I certainly wouldn't have any fear of her trying to punch me out, I can tell you that. And so I resolved to learn martial arts because of that, you know. That was how I got in it. It's not why I stayed in it. I learned something about discipline and how really undisciplined I am. Not from a fighting standpoint, but in so many other ways in my mind, I learned something. And that led to another thing and another thing, and another thing. And ultimately, it led me to the Dharma. But it's, yes.
I think the key word that you said a few times through this talk is the word clarity. Because, even if you're, I remember saying in Zen, becoming one with your task instead of, oh God, I'm on this washboard having to do this. If you're accepting that this is what you do and it's not drudgery, there may be a little bit of joy in it, and you have clarity.
Mhm.
And if you felt no fear in that situation, you'd have clarity. And I think that's the key word for be able to make the right decisions and always.
Yeah, and it's where we like really become honest with ourselves, inside and outside. Because at that time, I was really, except for smoking, I don't think they really get on you that bad as a Christian. I was a really good Christian. I love God, I love the Bible, I love people, I love, right? You know, but in that moment, the scripture didn't come up in my head. If a man takes your coat, give him your cloak too. Man strikes you on one cheek, turn the other. That did not come up for me. Then,
How many times?
but there are many times that it did come up, but at the time that I needed it, I had no practice to sustain myself. You see, I had no cultivation to not be offended. It was her cigarette. She took it back. She took it back. If she did it in that way, she did it in that way. What is that to me? If she act like a ruffian and a heathen, do I do it too? But I didn't have that sense of self-possession at that time. And so I said, I understand the premise of all this goodness stuff, but I need the practices that will develop it in me. And that's what I started looking for. I said, okay, maybe in the Vatican they have 10,000 manuscripts, but we have one book with 66 chapters, and some of them we're not sure are authentic. So I just don't think I have enough information. Where can I get more information? I know that one of my masters said, if you want to know what a master means, don't ask his disciples, because they don't know. They're just trying to get it. Go ask another master what a master means. And so I changed the form of my inquiry. That's when I was no longer afraid to read the writings of some other teachers from other spiritual disciplines. I lost my fear of that, seeking to ask a master who could maybe explain it to me in a different way, or who could give me a technique or a way to do something. And so my fear of like, oh, that ain't in the Bible right there. Neither is 2 + 2 is 4, and how you come to that conclusion. But I still use it when I'm counting my money. And so we learn in these kinds of ways. And this is when we
our Buddha master always says that all worldly Dharma is Buddha Dharma. So anything that we are gonna learn about the Dharma, until we get into that mind state of differentiation, we're gonna learn it through the medium of worldly things. We are. And so there is to heal the world and not think that that's from our spiritual trajectory. So the patience, endure, to stick with it. We like work at learning a mantra, and after 3 days, we like, I just can't get it. Or we get it and then we do it for a month. No, I'm not gonna do that anymore. You know, we don't even give it a chance for it to whirl and spin off, and us to arouse the energy that creates an opening before we've abandoned it and now we want another one. And or, so we don't have enough endurance, stick to itness with things, not being able to see the profitability of it or to see the benefit of it, and connecting the dots of the fruit born from our experiences. We can talk all night about the bad things that happen to us, but the good things we forget about. I woke up this morning like I was in a heavenly, a heavenly word. I mean, the birds were like going mad out. They were just chirping and singing, and the cat was having conniptions. It was running back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, running, jumping. And I have a table in front of the window, and it has a cloth on it. So he backs up in the hall. He backs up like this and hunches down, and he shoots straight across the room, jumps up on that table. The scarf goes sliding, and he has to leap off into the windowsill before he smashes into the wall. So I'm sitting here getting anxiety, but he's like just having fun doing what he's doing, and he's on the screen trying to get to the birds in the trees and the bushes right outside my window. And he's salivating. I mean, cats salivate. He's like, and I'm just watching this whole thing. And I was just laying there with my hands on my head, thinking, I need to get up and prepare for Dharma. Like, oh, never mind, it'll come to me when I get, you know. And like Joe's ringing the doorbell, ready to go, wait a minute, Joe, because at the last minute, I'm trying to get my Dharma together. But I was just vibing with just the feeling of just an enormous amount of gratitude, because we did a 3-hour training on a program that we loved yesterday. That was a somatic training, and my body bore witness to the efficacy of it, and that my body was with me today instead of fighting me, and even though we went out to a restaurant, I don't want to name the restaurant, food was not too good.
What restaurant was it?
It's all right, you don't have to go.
I'm getting better at saying things,
Chain restaurant.
and yeah, so we went to, and I was thinking that I could tell the food wasn't good for me. So my body felt the effects of the food. But apart from that, something else was stirring in my body from yesterday and the exercises that we did. Something had shifted in the energetics in my body, and that even overrode the not so good, really gross, dense physical feeling that just elated me. And I woke up saying, I'm going to do those exercises or those practices. I'm going to, because some of it is in intonation and some other things. I said, when I was going to cardiac rehab every day, drag it in. It takes an hour to get ready and an hour to get there. They get there, they check in blood pressure, they check in this, they check in that. Then you get on the thingy. And I never in like weeks, I never advanced from the box. I never even age, and I just know my pressure would go up just on the bicycle and I thought finally I just dropped out. But here was something I could do and had immediate benefit. I could know it. And it set up some movement in my body that was still moving today, undeniable. That's what I'm saying. When you latch onto the Dharma, this is what will happen to you. And the only reason I went to this or did this was because I've been listening to what Buddha Master says, and he was saying, some of the places, Pannavati, that you want to get into within, like a mental or psychological, or what you might want to call spiritual dimension, your body can't handle it. You can, your body is too weak. Your body's too out of order. You can't get there as much as you want to. Get your body together. And so I said, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to do it now. Buddha Master said I need to get my body together. And so I've been looking for ways to do that. I'll try something, no, doesn't work. Try something else, no, doesn't work. But I didn't give up, and it's not that I deliberately want to be non-compliant, but the very first thing he explained was, you should do these things, but your body is fighting a different kind of trauma and crisis right now. It just can't support you in that. And I felt seen, heard, understood. Somebody saying, oh, you got to do this. You got to walk every day. I can't walk right now. My body won't support me in that. But I found something that my body would support me in. Out of the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, find something in there that will support you. You find it. They had to go by hearsay. By the way, this meditation, they would come and gather in a group and they sat quietly waiting for the teacher to come. Once he arrived, they had a Dharma talk and then they left. They didn't gather to meditate. They gathered for teaching. And then they go back and they'd apply it in their lives. So a number of them said, this is our focus. Let us form a community and we'll do that. That's how the monastic community came together and how it thrived. So it's not like a lot of people coming together with different minds, but ones with the same mind came together. That's relationship. So it definitely teaches us what right relationships should look like. Joyful effort, not straining and struggling. You just ask a question. Ask it to who? Just ask it. Don't direct it to anybody. Just ask the question. Universe, just ask it. The universe is just magnificent by design. Somewhere in here, you'll get an answer. And you say, it came to me, such and such. It came to me, such and such. And then when it comes to you, reflect on it. Reflect means being able to sit with it. I'm almost through. Being able to sit with it and to be with it, to see what the wisdom can be squeezed out of it that could be useful for you.
it doesn't mean, in the beginning, you might think and ponder, but you only do that enough to light the match. Because the only thinking you can do will be in a line or with the basis of what you already know. You can't think up what you don't know. You can realize something that you didn't know, but you can't think it up. And so you use thinking only to bring you get you on a trajectory. And then you ponder that which you are, or ponder in this case, meaning whole, looking to see the possibility of this concept or this thought being true. How can I see that in my life? How can I see that show up? Have I ever seen it show up? Oh yeah, I think I have. Oh, like in this situation. And that's meditative concentration. And once you resolve it, that you know it, the mind relaxes. It says, I know that, and the mind relaxes, and there comes a stillness. You can't think yourself into stillness. And then one is in a place then where they can apprehend or penetrate emptiness. That's how that's why there's so many different meditation techniques, many different meditation trainings, different ones for different things, different ones for different times, different ones for different situations, different ones for different minds. I think I want to stop there. I want to ask you if you could, these paramis, these 6 paramis, and how that comes together with, or to help you better understand the 5 fears of beginning bodhisattvas. So they don't just become topical teachings, but how they overlap and create a web of understanding. And so that can help us to become better human beings. And then ultimately, we just naturally become holy beings. Yeah. So I thank you for coming today. If you have any comment, please feel free to share.
Sorry. It's the history.
I used to be known for having hissy fits. I'm better now. Be well and happy and peaceful. May
Thank you.
come to you
Beautiful.
in no danger. May you always meet the inevitable difficulties of life. Yeah.